Welcome to the Liberating Joy in Learning podcast. I'm Robert Beckshen, and today we're continuing our discussion of learning principles in Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller's book, Mind Your Mindset, The Science That Shows Success Starts With Your Thinking. And today we're going to talk about some of their principles that relate to the primary lenses of wondering shamelessly and claiming our learning. Now in Chapter 1, Hyatt and Miller explain that as high achievers, when we encounter problems, gaps, or obstacles en route to our goals, we usually size up the problem quickly and jump to the solution. The strategy like this: problem overcomes strategy. Once you've optimized your strategy and improved your execution of that strategy, you may still be left with a gap. Often, as they describe it, we're missing the story we're telling ourselves about the problem itself. Problem, story, strategy. We need to understand, as they later explain, that current conclusions about a situation are not the only possible formulation. They're just the best we have at this moment, but there is almost always an alternative way to see it. So a question we have is, when has a strategy that you've used successfully in the past failed you?
Things never fail, right? Never. I had a hard time coming up with this one.
Right.
I remember when my kids were little. Nathan was maybe 2. And we went to a water park, one of those where there's slides and little things for little kids.
Oh, splash pad.
Splash pad.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And the first day we went was amazing. Like the kids just all ran, and I sat and just enjoyed. And the second day, a little bit less and a little bit less. And so that was an example of, something that worked for a while, but then they kind of got bored with it, or for whatever reason, it didn't work as well.
Right.
How about you? There's
definitely things that I've done in the past where it worked one day and then after time it didn't, but I just really can't. I mean, I've got too many to
Okay, so
of.
we encourage you to watch for those.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, a good example, I think, right now is my eternal struggle with learning to play the guitar. I want to play the guitar. I want to learn how to play it. And just for background, when I was a kid, when I was in junior high school, I played the cello. And I loved to play the cello. And I was good at playing the cello. But my parents could never afford an instrument. And when we moved from Las Vegas, where they had a program in all the schools that I was at, to where they live now, where they didn't have a program, I had to give it up because I couldn't afford an instrument. I've always wanted to play an instrument since then. I've always had this desire to play the guitar. And I'll get going, and I've got a guitar, I've got books, I'll get started playing, and then something will come up, and I drop it for months. Like, okay, well, I got to pick it up again. And so there's that's where I start going, and then something happens, and I lose steam, and I put it down. So I guess that's one story.
Right. Well, you try different things, and they don't work, and so you have to try something else.
Yeah. Or it's just hard to keep with it because of life.
Yes.
In order to resolve this gap, we have to wonder. They talk about how to do this in Chapter 7 and 8. Hyatt and Miller say, when we continue to interrogate, we keep ourselves open to solutions. We have to hold our stories with an open hand, not a clenched fist. When you find yourself unwilling to question a concept or connection that forms your story, find out why. Ask questions. Your ego is not on trial here. Closed questions presume that there is a single right answer to be immediately identified. So when have you gotten stuck on a single right answer?
I wrote down parenting. They need to choose from these shoes. No, they don't want any of those shoes. They need to get jobs done. How are we going to get jobs done?
Right.
And it works for a while, and then we create a new system.
Right.
And a lot of it is just, this is how I think we're going to go. And the kids are like, no. So that's what I was thinking of.
Okay. In my work, there are some times where I get stuck on something is successful on one project. Like, okay, I'm going to do that in the next project. And it may be successful, maybe not quite as much. And then I think, okay, I think it'll be okay. And then I do it again on the third, and it fails miserably. Whether it's a design approach or it's a way of presenting, there's sometimes it just happens. The antidote to closed questions is asking possibility questions. Possibility questions allow for exploration and discovery, which lie at the heart of imagination. Questions like these light up new neural pathways in the brain. Possibility questions emanate from an imaginative, solutions-oriented mindset. They're a way of developing what psychologist Martin Seligman labeled learned optimism. A possibility question is any query that takes you beyond an analysis of the problem to a search for new solutions. So how does thinking of possibility questions help you wonder shamelessly better?
I had to get to a point where I could play with ideas that might be right.
Right.
And be okay with the ones that aren't. But I needed to just have lots of ideas and allow that.
Right.
Just allow it to be messy
Right.
while I figured out what solution I really
Right.
wanted. Like, it was okay to play with ideas that may not work.
Right.
Seth Godin has an amazing blog about this. And if I think of it, I'll try and post it. But it's just like, you have to start with something that
Right.
might not be right, that might be right. Because
Right.
if you limit yourself, you may miss out on those things that could be right.
Right. And just going back on my previous example of things that work, the way that that's helped me get over that is I look for a second opinion. I look for not a second opinion, but a different perspective.
Right.
I ask somebody else who has a different outlook or has a different life experience to give their input. I'll say, okay, this is what I'm doing for this design here. What do you think? And like, well, that looks okay, but what about coming from over here? Like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. Because everybody has their own life experience that has shaped them to look at the world in a certain way, which is okay. But there are a multitude of different ways to look at the same solution, the same idea. There's different stories.
Right.
And sometimes we need that little bit of outside input to give us that spark to come up with a different story.
Right. So in their book, they give us a bunch of examples of possibility questions. So I'm going to list those and be thinking about which one you like. What does this make possible? What if I've got it backward? What would it take to accomplish X, Y, or Z? How can we reframe this? What else could I think? How do I want to show up in this situation? What is likely to happen in 12 months, 3 years? How could we change that? Who knows more about this than I do, like you mentioned, right? What would have to be true for that to happen? So which of these could help you consider new possibilities in your learning? Is there one that...
Well, I like the one about who knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, right.
But the other thing that I look at when I first started, I can't remember if we said this, but I'm a landscape architect. One of the things that I look for when I look for design is I looked at what would my kids enjoy if I'm doing a park. What would my kids want to do? And that helps me reframe the story. You know, I may have an idea that looks great from looking up above, you know, from bird's eye view, but when you get down on the ground, it's you can't play, you can't do things. So I think, well, what would my kids do? Mm-hmm. So that's a question that would help me.
Right, and you're kind of using both of those. That's
right.
the one that jumped out at me. And how can we reframe this? Essentially, that's what all of these questions are doing,
right.
is reframing it. But I think everyone's going to have their own questions,
right.
to help them think of possibilities,
right.
Because I didn't like most of these,
right.
They didn't speak to me, but so I'm thinking, am I asking the question that I really want to ask?
Right.
So I like that concept. You know, when you're thinking possibilities, is the question working for me that I'm asking? And if not, well, how could I ask it in another way? I love wondering shamelessly.
Yeah.
Of course, it's the first one, so I do it a lot. But I love wondering shamelessly.
Right.
I love just asking lots of questions. Just leave it open and let the questions flow.
And it gets back to what they said earlier about our ego is not on trial. It's okay to question what we're doing. It's okay to say, is this right for me? It may be, but unless you pause a moment and say, is there another way to look at this? Am I going the right direction? Is there a better path for me? It's okay to ask those questions. And I think that ultimately that's what I think a lot of people have a hard time accepting, is that it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill that you have to learn and be comfortable with.
And I love the concept of possibility, right? We're not asking questions to destroy or break something down. We're asking questions to understand the possibilities.
Right.
And that's why I made it wondering shamelessly.
Right.
Because the ego is not, put the ego aside.
Right.
Don't worry about your mistakes. Don't worry about any other primary lens, and just wonder.
Right. And that's totally fine.
In Chapter 4, Hyatt and Miller help us understand the power of claiming our learning. They say, depending on the story we tell ourselves about reality, we can create a different reality. Sometimes our goals enable us to imagine better, more empowering stories. When we commit to an outcome, we can combine the ideas at our disposal to fashion stories that serve the goal. So how have you created a different reality by claiming your learning?
Well, getting back to the example that we've used before is disc golf. I had felt, and I hadn't mentioned this, but I got to a point where I felt like I was cruising. I wasn't improving. I know I could do better. I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I okay, well, let's do a little bit of searching. Let's ask. Let me ask some questions. What can I do differently in the way I'm playing this game to improve so that I feel like I can enjoy it better, more. And when I did, I came up with some answers. I tried them out. Some of them didn't work. Some of them I'm still trying to figure out, and it's a process. But I can see it. I'm not coasting anymore. I can see the progress going upward again of my ability to play disc golf.
Mm-hmm. I love the process of claiming. Of course, I love wondering. We just talked about that. When the wondering is done well, then it leads to powerful claiming.
Right.
Because you're rethinking, you're thinking possibilities, you're thinking of new possibilities that you haven't considered before. And so then when you're ready to actually claim it, I love the concept of when we taught our kids to ride a bike, we did not push them behind. We just let them glide, right?
Right.
And they glided long enough. At some point, they're going to be like, done gliding, put my feet on the pedals, right? And that's what wondering is all about.
Right.
And then when you've wondered long enough, then you're ready to put your feet on the pedals,
and go
and claim it, and it will be better than anything you had done before without that wondering.
Right.
So that's what it is to me. Is that it just by wondering, I find the words that really get to what I want to learn.
Right.
So thanks for joining us in this discussion of Michael Hyatt and Megan Hyatt Miller's book, Mind Your Mindset, and the principles in it that relate to the primary lenses of wondering shamelessly and claiming our learning. Next time, we'll wrap up our discussion of learning principles in this book. And as always, if you have questions or comments, message us at learningliberated.com or on our Learning Liberated Facebook group. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else that might enjoy it as well. Bye.
Bye.